Well, thanks for having me here again. And I know a lot of you were in the talk last night, so hopefully I won't duplicate too much, but I know there's some new faces here today too. And a lot of people I've met for the first time, and I'm happy to do that. And I appreciate the chance to come to Oklahoma. We talked a little bit last night too about the Centennial and what a great year it was. And the two real movers and shakers in the state are in the room with Gene and Sam, W5LE and W5CU, and they were brave and took on an early position in the year last year. And Oklahoma is really in a good spot to work the U.S. And I think all those big signals that came out of the state were really, really important, and people started hearing it like, wow, what's going on? This is kind of interesting because these guys are loud, and had Connie going and Coy, so it was a really big deal. And the Centennial was a great success. So I'm just kind of starting off talking about that. There were a lot of components to our Centennial. So how many people came to Newington last year? Did anybody come to the convention? Wow, got a bunch of people I can really talk to and show this stuff to then. Won't be too boring. The main, we had an on-the-air component, which was my job to create and bring it to there was a Centennial Committee, of course, which was great. And President Craigie chaired that, so we had a committee working on the whole project, and part of that project was the convention, which hadn't been done in Hartford for many, many decades, actually, and then an on-the-air component, which was my favorite part of it. And the convention turned out spectacular. We were able to convince a group in New England in general. There's a place called Boxborough, Massachusetts, and every 2 years there's a big hamfest there, and that was lined up to happen last year. So the convention's planning started by going to the guys that ran Boxborough and asking them to help us rather than have their show, so there wouldn't be any competition. And it turned out so well that everybody asked to have it in Newington or Hartford all the time. It was so much better. So I like to say, yeah, you can do things a lot better when you throw 75 people at an event. That was the key part of it. We had all our staff working on it. Everybody in the building basically worked on it. So there was no bare bones operations. That's a reason why you can't do that every year. It's hard to have that kind of a resource available, but it was excellent. In the on-air part, I wanted all the members to be involved. And some of you probably remember in the past when we'd celebrate Hiram Maxim's birthday, and we would get on the air and sign our call / whatever birthday it was, 110, 120, things like that, and then we'd try to create a point system, and basically everybody could work each other, but the points were only gained for everybody above a member. So the life members and all the appointees were worth points, but the actual members, which is the lion's share of the operators, were not. This was an opportunity to have everybody be part of it. And it turned out way bigger than I thought it would. I'm a pretty pie-in-the-sky thinking guy, and I didn't think it'd end up being that popular. It took a while. It was basically me calling CQ there that first month and calling CQ Centennial and CW CENT and trying to get people interested. And I set up my QRZ page so if people looked me up, they would start to read about it. And very slowly it ramped up, and the key part of making it really take off was all the W1AWs that were on the air. And we had 2 operations of about 1 week each for each state, and most of the territories ended up getting on the air. We had Samoa and the Northern Marianas. We even had a couple guys who got permission to go to Guantanamo Bay and operate. And for the first time, the Navy actually allowed someone to use a portable KG-4 in Guantanamo, and that had never happened before. They always issued an actual call sign to someone who was on the base. We also had Guam, of course, and Hawaii and Alaska and Puerto Rico a couple times, and Virgin Islands. So we made... That's good audio. 3.5 million contacts were made with W1AW stations last year, which is going to result in the largest QSLing project in the history of Earth. 3.5 million contacts were made. And that's just with W1AW. All the rest of us, we added 10 to 15 million contacts. It was that successful. I'll ask again, how many people use Logbook of the World? Oklahoma is pretty advanced, I would say. That's a lot. So you guys noticed that all these states and all the QSOs and everybody working each other did show up in Logbook, over 50%, and it was really a big deal. There are so many awards now issued for WAS that it was just incredible. I was kind of worried, actually, when it was over, that people wouldn't be interested in chasing WAS anymore because they'd worked W1AW so many times. Actually, about 4,000 people worked all 50 W1AW states. We did that count. And about 15 to 20,000 people had enough points in the QSO points challenge to qualify for that, which was 1,000 points. So you could work President Craigie once and a couple directors and a few staff, and you could get to 1,000 points pretty easy. But it got much bigger than that, much, much bigger. There was this roving horde. I know that you guys will remember it, but from Japan, they put us on the cover of their magazine and talked about it multiple times, and I called it a roving horde of JAs. As soon as you got on the band and got spotted, the same 500 guys would be in that pile-up. So many people got to experience what it was like being on the other side that it became so addicting, and every opportunity by the end of the year, that those last weeks were just incredible. And I'm really, really happy that people got to experience it. It was great for the hobby. So this year, we're putting in planning, and it's now been announced, so I'm not scooping anybody, but the National Park Service is having their centennial in 2016. So this year we're planning to be part of that, and there's going to be an award and operating activity to activate as many of the national parks as possible. And there's at least one national park in every state and most territories. And we're not going to be putting W1AW out in the field this time, but any call anyone wants to use is fine. And we'll have a scheduling page and rules, of course, and charts showing what parks are where. And I have a feeling it'll be another slow ramp up next year, but it'll be very popular when summer gets here and a lot of people start camping and putting on these parks. And there will be awards for people who put on, they're activators, and there's awards for chasers. So it'll be a nice opportunity to get out whenever it's convenient, whatever kind of weather is good around the country. In Oklahoma, you really don't want to go sit outside from now until about 6 p.m., I'm learning. So not as good a time to go out and operate from a park, but you can do it very easily in February and March. And the whole world will be looking for us again, because we're going to have it in Logbook, and it'll be like a DXCC for a year, but you have 400 entities to work. And it might just spur another whole type of award for us to have. And the Park Service is really happy to see that we picked up. Of all the partners the Park Service has, I think they really were surprised by the hams coming out and doing this. So it'll be a nice time to combine the best parts of radio, the field day, the camping, the taking your family out. You don't have to just sit there on the radio for 24 hours because it's not going to be 1 week. The park can be on the air all the time with different people trying it. So all the modes and bands can be covered. We're not going to count every band mode, but one QSO. There will be more than that. But
so will there be a park identifier that would be short?
Yep. The question is, will there be a way to not have to send the whole name of the park? Yes. It'll be like OK1 would be this park, and we'll have a key to that. And probably an abbreviation, too, for someone to send the name on CW. And, on the phone, you're going to be up to your own challenge to spell out some of the names if people want them. But, yeah, we'll have all that to print out, too, to keep by the desk. And that's manageable. That's manageable. That's not going to take our IT system off air like the Centennial has and still isn't done with. But that's a really fine part of this game. So I like how Lloyd remembered my saying, and I can get fights started at headquarters by saying, I run the department basically that's in charge of everything that is, was, or ever will be important in ham radio. Naturally, the other department managers don't like that too much, but it is what it is. And I like that. I've been to headquarters now I'm in my 17th year. And as I said last night, I still can't imagine that I'm there. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, really, how life turns out. What's the right word? I gave up a lot of things when I was a kid to do radio. I was a great baseball player. I'd stay up all night doing 20 meters, and then I'd go to school and I'd come home and go right to bed. And the most beautiful girls down the street would come and put little sticky notes on my window because they knew where it was, wondering where I was. But I did 20 CW and 10 CW and everything else, and never knowing that I would end up at headquarters working. And it's been quite a ride, and I really can't believe it's still happening today. And as Lloyd pointed out, ARRL, as you know, is the largest society left on Earth. Overall, ham radio in the U.S. is excellent right now. The state of affairs is very good. There's 167,000 members, 730,000 total licensees still in the U.S. It's been going up more or less every month, the total number of hams. And now, as I pointed out last night, I noticed 2 months in a row, June and July, where the total number of ham population has dropped 2 in a row. It's dropped over the years, but only 1 month at a time, then it usually goes back up. I don't know what that means, and it's a small drop, but it's the first time that there's been 2 months that's happened. So it's too early to draw any conclusions, but there's so many licenses, and a lot of them are expiring. There's still about 11,600 novice licenses, and tens of thousands of advanced left, and people are upgrading and going SK, and that's just a natural progression. But overall, the ham radio service is doing very well. You know, we get a lot of attention in Congress. A lot of the staffs know who we are. We're doing this attempt again to expand knowledge of ham radio, replace our spectrum if somebody takes it at the federal level. And the biggest problem we're always fighting is where to put antennas. It's really hard to be a ham if you don't have antennas, and we realize that, and the board certainly realizes it much more than we do at staff level, because the board hears from everybody. But it's very difficult today to find a place to live where you can have outdoor antennas in most of the urban areas of this country. It is a big problem, and whether or not we're ever successful in convincing Congress to override the FCC and tell them to allow reasonable ham antennas in places that are covered by CC&Rs, at least the knowledge base is building about it. And it's a long process, as you know. The letters, if you guys have written letters that we will send on to Congress, they really help. They get them, they read them. Every one of them that gets to them is counted. And a lot of congressmen get it, and they understand. They don't want to know exactly what it is we do. As I said last night, there's a ham in every county in the U.S. That's our most powerful marketing tool. And we are all interoperable. We can all communicate on voice, especially. It's really important, and that's why ARRL works so hard to have membership and to have hams everywhere. And it's not just ARRL doing it. It really isn't. One of the astounding facts that I learned upon coming to headquarters was just how many volunteers there are. All the badge wearers, all the different colors. There's probably about 10,000 volunteers working with us every day in the United States, and more overseas. It's really something. I would never have guessed that. And part of our tax filings every year involve reporting how many volunteers we have, and it's really something. The nebulous area we can't really tell, but we're working on, is exactly how many ARRS members there are. Some states and sections collect the data and tell us, some don't, and it's really, really difficult for us to try to go down the rabbit hole of a database at the national level. So we really need that to happen at the section level so that we can report, especially when you go visit a congressman. Yeah, we have this many people registered to be emergency communications people in this state, in this section, and that's important too. We're always trying to get a handle on that. Katrina caused the interoperability to be fixed. Most of us knew that was probably going to be happening, but they dumped billions of dollars into this communication system that is across the entire country. It's much better than it was. Hams are very much a part of it, but it's evolved to the hams that really are at the local level now. All disasters are local, so it's a very important thing to always be involved at the local level. Pick out a served agency at your local level and just be ready to help that agency. I think that's the key. We need more and more to know how to use our equipment. It's really interesting to watch how hams and emergency preparedness have evolved, and lots of people lately have gotten licensed to be part of that and to support a hospital or a volunteer fire group or anything, but they actually have now discovered that they need to be on the air. They need to be able to actually pass a tactical message with phonetics, and if you don't get on and do that all the time, it's really not very helpful to the served agency, because that's what we're going to be doing more of. And of course there's always going to be a need for digital modes, and that's a whole set of technical skills and difficulties apart from just being able to communicate with voice. But communicating with voice is still where it's at. It's going to be that way forever. We're always going to need that. Let's see. I'll touch quickly on overseas. The societies are really shrinking. The number of them are shrinking, and the number of hams in the societies overseas are shrinking. A lot of countries only have a couple active hams, and they do band together and make a society out of it, but they don't really do anything. So ARRL tries to take care of that. ARRL funds the International Amateur Radio Union. I'm not sure everybody realizes that, but your dues actually help fund ham radio around the world. And frequently, whatever ARRL does, the other societies do. And they take our materials to their government and try to help them understand what ham radio can do. So everything we do has an impact. And sometimes you don't feel it at first or you don't see it, but it's out there. We still have one of the most desirable license systems in the world. Having a U.S. license gains you access to operate from many different countries around the world that no one else has. It's kind of created a little bit of a problem now with so many foreigners having U.S. calls that they like our calls, and a lot of them are having a little game of seeing how many of our 1x2 and 2x1 calls they can take out of our system. But overall, it's really a mind-boggling thing. As a Navy guy and a veteran, and I know there's lots of veterans in the room, I'm just kind of stupefied sometimes that I can think of 3 Russians in Moscow who all have U.S. extra class licenses and 1x2 calls, and they get together and issue U.S. federal licenses to each other. I just can't get past that, but that's happening, and it's happening all over the world. So it's just the evolution of our society.